In a land far, far away, in a time long, long ago, there lived a ruler whose empire stretched from one continent to another. His name was King Xerxes. A mighty king was he. He wanted to celebrate the power of his 127 provinces, so for 6 months in his city of Shushan, there was a feast with all the food, drink, and entertainment one could imagine. During this party, King Xerxes sent for his wife, Queen Vashti. He wanted her to come to him to show all his guests how beautiful his queen was.
But Queen Vashti would not come. This was not a wise choice made by Queen Vashti.
This made King Xerxes unhappy with Queen Vashti. Disrespecting the king like that was not tolerated. King Xerxes called for his leaders. When they arrived, he informed them of what Queen Vashti had done. He trusted his advisors to help him decide what should be done with Queen Vashti. The king's advisors told him to get rid of Queen Vashti before other women would follow her example. And so, King Xerxes removed Queen Vashti as his queen. She was told never to return. King Xerxes did not want to live by himself. After all, what good is a king without a queen? And so King Xerxes' advisors suggested there be a beauty contest in order to determine who the future queen would be. They brought together women throughout the land, kind of like the show Bachelor, except in this case the king would not see the women. Instead, they were taken to a remote area of the castle to be groomed until the day King Xerxes would see them.
In the kingdom lived a Jewish leader named Mordecai, who had a niece named Esther. Mordecai sent his niece to the contest to see if she would be chosen as the next queen. Mordecai told Esther to tell no one that she was a Jew, because it was not looked highly upon in Persia to live for God.
For many weeks, Esther was taken good care of as she prepared to meet King Xerxes for the first time. During this time, she won the favor of the guards, which proved that God was working out his plans for good.
Meanwhile, Mordecai kept a close eye on Esther, while also spending much time praying that God would be faithful to his people.
For 12 months, Esther waited to meet King Xerxes. In the 10th month of the 7th year of his reign, King Xerxes and Esther finally met, and the king loved Esther more than any of the other women in the contest. He crowned her queen. Mordecai still watched over Esther. One day he overheard 2 soldiers plotting to harm King Xerxes. Mordecai found Esther and told her of the plot. Esther went before King Xerxes and told him everything Mordecai had told her, that his life was in danger. An investigation was held. The men were found and hung in a tree. One does not threaten King Xerxes. There was a prince among princes called Haman, whom King Xerxes promoted above every man in the kingdom. Everyone bowed before Haman except Mordecai. It was known that Mordecai was a Jew, and Haman was angry that this Jew would not bow before him. After all, it was only right to bow before God, no man. In anger, Haman went to King Xerxes requesting that all Jews, including Mordecai, be killed. Haman convinced the king, and so a day was chosen when all the Jews would be killed.
Mordecai was sorrowful. He knew that there was nothing he could do but seek God. Queen Esther realized that something was wrong with Mordecai, so she arranged a meeting with him. Mordecai told Esther the plan Haman had made, and that the king had signed off on it. Esther knew that as the queen, she might be able to convince the king to destroy Haman's plans. But there was a problem. It was the law that if anyone went to the king's inner court without being called by the king, they would be put to death, unless King Xerxes held out the royal scepter to them. Mordecai told Esther that she had to save her people, the Jews. Perhaps this is why she was chosen to be queen. For 3 days, Queen Esther did not eat, Instead, she called upon God to help give her favor and provide deliverance for her people. Knowing that her life might be taken from her that very day, Esther boldly went into the king's chamber. King Xerxes saw her and held out his royal scepter to her, asking, "What is thy petition?" Queen Esther invited King Xerxes and Haman to a feast where they would be the only guests. The queen wanted to gain favor with King Xerxes since she rarely spent time with him. Meanwhile, Mordecai was outside the king's gate and still would not bow before Haman. After all, he trusted completely in God even though he didn't know what would happen. In anger, Haman went home and built poles to hang Mordecai. The next day was another feast by Queen Esther for King Xerxes and Haman. The king asked again, "What is thy petition?" She answered, to have her life given her, and also the life of her people, for she was under an edict to be killed on the day of Pur. King Xerxes asked, "Who issued this edict?" And Esther said, "Prince Haman." The king granted Esther's request, and her people were okay. Things did not go well for Haman. The ring King Xerxes gave him was given to Mordecai. Queen Esther received from King Xerxes the house of Haman. Queen Esther gave all these things to Mordecai. The poles that Haman built for Mordecai were instead used to hang Haman.
God had proved to Esther, Mordecai, and all the Jews that he is more powerful than any earthly king, and that he can be trusted to deliver people from the devil's schemes. Many years later, God would send his Son, Jesus Christ, to deliver people by taking the penalty of their sins on the cross. By trusting in Jesus as Savior, God promises to always help us in times of need.